I should like to say a few words upon this subject, and I know that I echo the opinions of well-known authorities on training. It is natural that a sound constitution, inherited from healthy parents, and a proportionate build should be great advantages for a future athlete. Especially should the heart and the lungs be normal, although I quite admit that one finds strong and healthy children of comparatively weak parents, and vice versa. And I know of many cases in which seemingly weak or ailing youngsters have developed into strong men, thanks to their energetic endurance and steadfast desire to achieve that result. As regards stature, I will only mention that a moderate height of from 5 feet 6 inches to 6 feet seems very favorable, seeing that that is the average of most strong men. I myself am 5 feet 9 inches. But of course there are exceptions to this. The body should be built very uniformly, so that the whole appearance makes a harmonious impression. It would not matter much whether the arms or legs were somewhat under the normal length, but a short trunk would indicate a poor development of the important inner organs, such as lungs, heart, and stomach, and therefore would be less favorable. For wrestling and boxing, long arms are an advantage, whilst for weightlifting I should prefer shorter arms, but of course the principal point lies with the more or less favorable leverage capacity of the frame. Now it is a fact that by reasonable physical exercise the growth of the structure is encouraged. By reasonable exercise I mean such as is adapted to the personal constitution and the age of the individual. During the process of growth and bodily development, say until about the 20th year, one ought not to practice any extreme athletic feats, but ought to pay chief attention to agility and alertness. Regular exercise in youth stimulates the growth and increases the strength and efficiency of all internal processes. For great feats of strength with heavy weights, experience teaches that between the years of 30 and 40 is the most favorable age. I suppose, though, that I am an exception, as I had already established world's records before I was 21. It will, however, I think be of interest to quote the opinions of a few eminent authorities on these subjects. Adolph Andruschkewitzsch, who is a well-known Russian athlete and authority on physical culture of Reval, says, "Every country can produce strong men. Estland, Russia in general offers no special advantages, although one might argue that Estland, similarly to, perhaps, Eastern Prussia, the native country of Sandow, Sturm, and Siegfried, has few industries, and that therefore its inhabitants pursue their vocations principally in the open, breathe pure air, and live on healthy, unadulterated foods. Estland's percentage of people of consumptive tendencies is very low, just as is that of Eastern Prussia, while in the thickly populated kingdom of Saxony, the ravages of this terrible disease are very severe. At the same time, however, Arthur Saxon, who is undoubtedly the best weightlifter of the present time, hails from Saxony. This opinion expressed in 1910. To become a good athlete, the candidate should, in my opinion, be possessed of a strong-boned frame and a good sound chest, and he should be generally healthy. To attain this, he ought to avoid worry and strenuous daily toil. The choice of food is of secondary consideration, as long as his meals are wholesome, regular, and properly digested. Alcohols and stimulants may produce seeming momentary strength, but in reality they weaken the system. An essential point is that the candidate puts his life and soul into the study of proper training. Enduring willpower is the mightiest factor for good results, and for the production of men like Hackenschmidt, Lurich, Sandow, Saxon, Aberg, or Hüppener. Max Danthage of Vienna, the well-known athlete-gymnast, says, "My principal nourishment consists of meat. I drink very little. For my breakfast I take very weak tea and a buttered roll. With my luncheon and dinner about 1 pint of light beer. I never drink wines, spirits, or water. Except in summer I do not bathe often, but I wash and take douches frequently, and use the towel well. I never fail to go through this washing performance after every exertion which has produced perspiration, and I may add that I use cold water. This cold washing should, however, not be of longer duration than a few seconds if the body has been perspiring. As regards training, I recommend the following items. Moderation in everything of whatever nature. Daily short baths and vigorous rubbing down. Daily physical exercise, avoiding great feats of strength but performing feats of endurance, and this until one begins to perspire slightly. I began to practice physical exercises regularly and systematically 6 years ago, when I was 31. Of course, I went through the usual physical training at school, between the years of 6 and 17, and after this, I continued gymnastics a few times per week on the horizontal bar at home in the garden, and practiced with small dumbbells. I like swimming, and have always indulged in this pleasurable exercise when I had an opportunity. Skating and cycling were other hobbies, and anything appertaining to gymnastical sports, except fencing and riding. I have never made a study of any particular line of sport. My present endeavor is to develop my body in every direction, and so give it every day not only its necessary food, but also to exercise it until, as I said before, my pores open and perspiration commences. The precise observation of all these points fitted me for such feats of endurance as you are familiar with, and my hardihood has become proverbial among my friends and acquaintances. I have been called the man who never catches cold or catarrh, and who is never ill. My measurements are: height 5 feet 8 inches, chest deflated 36 1/2 inches normal, 37 1/2 inches inflated, 40 3/4 inches, thighs 24 1/4 inches, calves 15 inches, biceps 14 3/4 inches, wrist 7 1/4 inches, weight 159 pounds. I must draw the reader's attention to the fact that Dan Thage, who is a member of the Royal Opera Band, is the gymnast who, among other feats of endurance, made what the Germans call the deep knee bend 6,000 times during 4 consecutive hours. The knee bend is a capital exercise and consists in bending your knees outwards by moving from the erect position to a sort of sitting posture without moving the feet. Monsieur Gasnier, the well-known athlete of Barnum and Bailey's Circus, writes, "Lots of people ask me whether they can become strong. Most certainly. You all can acquire great strength if you have the will and proper guidance. But before all, you must cultivate willpower, and this first lesson is the most important one. If physical exercises alone, without your will and mind, were all that was needful, everyone could become a strong man, whether he be a brain or muscle worker. The laborer, however, who never particularly uses his mind while he strains all his muscles in hard toil, and every day lifts weights, does not necessarily augment his strength. Those who would like to have well-developed muscles should guard against overexertion and impetuous exercise. One can become strong by daily exercises with heavy dumbbells, and such exercises should take place either 2 hours before or after meals. Before one begins with heavier weights, one ought to study what weights would not cause overexertion for the constitution, as it then is. I recommend cold baths twice a week, or daily cold washing of the whole body with a sponge, and this immediately upon rising in the morning. This is very healthy and invigorating. I should advise an amateur to vary the duration of his exercises. For instance, if he feels particularly fit, he may exercise a little longer than on days when he feels more or less tired. There is no doubt that simple food is the best,